every NFL draft, there is always a handful of players taken on day 2 or day 3 that end up being big-time draft steals. So in this video, I want to look back at last year's draft and go round by round and pick out which players are the biggest draft steals of the 2024 NFL draft. Subscribe if you're new, let's hop into it. So how we're going to do this video is I'm going to be going round by round. I'm going to pick out a handful of players that I think are the biggest draft steals of that round. You guys let me know in the comment section below if I miss any names, and we will begin with round number 2. So admittedly speaking, round 2 of the 2024 NFL draft is full of a bunch of really good players. We start off here with the top. Keon Coleman had a good rookie year, but the big ones that stand out to me, Ladd McConkey could have easily been a first-round pick. T'Vondre Sweat also had a really good rookie season, especially as a run defender. Obviously, Braden Fisk, Cooper DeJean, and Kamari Lassiter, even Kool-Aid McKinstry when healthy, all were players who could have been taken in the first round, and they all played like first-round guys. Jackson Powers-Johnson had a good year. Edgerrin Cooper had a fun year. Tyler Nubin looks like he might play a role for the New York Giants. Going a bit down the board here, Mike Sanders still had a really good season, especially playing nickel, but he can also play on the outside. Zach Frazier had a really good year for the Pittsburgh Steelers and looks to be their future center. Javon Bullard looks like he's going to have a role in this secondary. And then if we move down just a little bit more, we got Renardo Green, who had a big time rookie season for the 49ers, had a 74.3 PFF grade, played over 500 snaps, which is a big time for a late second round pick. But this is really where the big time steals start to come into play. From rounds 3 to 7, this is really what I consider to be full on steals of the draft, because the second round is basically just guys who were capable of being first round picks but just didn't end up in the first round. Right off the bat, I look at Brandon Coleman, who I know didn't have the greatest year in the world, but this is somebody who was projected to play at guard at the NFL level but ended up playing tackle for the Commanders, and that was a Commanders team that went very far last year. And I think a big reason why was the play of Brandon Coleman. Was it great? No, but it did prove to be good enough for the team to get where they ultimately needed to be. I think he will now move inside to play guard and play probably next to Laramie Tunsil, which would be good for him. Drew Phillips, the New York Giants, had a really good year last year. That was a Giants secondary that was really disappointing last year, but not in any sort of way because of Drew Phillips. Drew Phillips went in there, played at a very high level, and gave that defense somebody in the secondary who could actually play a little bit. So yeah, for the New York Giants, now they've went out there, they picked up Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland, and you're hoping that Drew Phillips can continue to trend in the right direction. And if that's the case, you feel really good about Drew Phillips in the secondary moving forward, even if Deonte Banks is looking like a little bit of a bust. Moving down the board just a bit more here, Cooper Beebe for the Dallas Cowboys was a big time pickup for the Dallas Cowboys. This was an offensive line for Dallas that wasn't incredible last year, especially when we know Dallas to be a team that typically has good offensive line play. Injuries kind of riddled the offensive line all year long. Their first round pick Tyler Guyton dealt with injuries. Zach Martin dealt with injuries. Now he's retired. But all the meanwhile, Cooper Beebe played center for the Dallas Cowboys and played the position at a very high level. Is he going to ever be a all-pro level guy? Probably not, but I could see him making and cracking a couple Pro Bowls if he keeps playing like he did last year and just keeps progressing. He also offers you flexibility to also play guard, which is also very nice. Sticking to the Cowboys here, Morris Leofau. This is somebody who a lot of people, including myself, really thought this was a very high pick for Morris Leofau. I thought more maybe 4th or 5th round, but he ended up going early in the 3rd round. And even though I thought it was a wasted pick here for the Cowboys to spend this one this early, especially when they looked like they needed a running back, he actually went in there and played really well for them. He now looks to be a big part of their linebacking core of the future. Again, I don't think he's necessarily going to be an all-pro or even a Pro Bowl level guy, but somebody who, taken in the 3rd round, I think he'll be a solid role player for this team for many years. I skipped this one, but Dominic Puny of the 49ers also had a really good year last year. This is an offensive line for the Niners that dealt with injuries all year last year and just didn't really play that great throughout the season, but Dominic Puny, for the most part, had a really good year. As you can see via PFF, an 80.5 overall grade, 68.9 pass blocking grade, and an 81.5 run blocking grade. Only gave up 3 sacks on over 1,078 offensive snaps. You'll take that from a 3rd round pick. So for San Francisco, with an offensive line that looks like it needs a bit of an overhaul at the moment, Dominic Puny steps in there and kind of looks to be a foundational part of that offensive line moving forward. Jalen McMillan kind of had a weird start to his season, but as the year went on, the stats started to come in, and he started to play a lot better last year, especially, like I said, a little later in the season. So I do think he's going to continue to stick in and be that 3rd option behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, which is perfectly fine. You took him in the 3rd round. That's kind of what you were hoping for him to become. And it does feel like they have a really good trio of receivers that all kind of complement each other in a really nice way. And Jalen McMillan looks like he's going to be a big part of that moving forward. I also want to give a quick shout out to Peyton Wilson right here. This is somebody who dealt with a bunch of injuries during his time at NC State. Some people had him going as early as 1st round. I had an early 3rd to late 2nd round grade on him last year. And so far via PFF, he's been worthy of the pick on over 493 snaps played, 75.3 overall grade, 66.4 pass rush grade, 63.4 run defense grade, and a 76.9 coverage grade, 55 24 solo tackles, a forced fumble, 16 assisted tackles. For a third round pick, you will take this. Again, he played over almost 500 snaps last year in a really solid defense. And now you kind of look at the future of that team, and I do believe that Peyton Wilson will probably play a big part of that defense. Just to kind of give you a reference point, Maurice Lafau, who I thought had a really good year last year, got taken several picks in front of Peyton Wilson, but I would say Peyton Wilson was clearly the bigger steal of the draft, at least we think. But now we enter into day 3 in the 4th round, and there's a couple really good players in this one. Jatavion Sanders didn't have the biggest year last year, but does look like he's going to continue to grow inside his position. Still don't necessarily say that he's a steal quite yet. Same thing with Troy Franklin. Wouldn't call him necessarily a steal quite yet. But then we get to Evan Williams of the Green Bay Packers, safety taken at pick 111. Williams bursted onto the scene early last year and played really well early on, but kind of towards the back end, he struggled here and there, but still 72.6 overall grade, 65.2 run defense grade, but more importantly, a 72.1 coverage grade. Only allowed 13 receptions, had a pick, 33 solo tackles, and played 473 snaps on the season. So again, this is somebody taken in the 4th round with probably not a lot of expectations, but went in there, played at a fairly high level, and now looks to be a future partner alongside Javon Bullard, who can move around to different positions, and of course Xavier McKinney. Now it looks like the secondary for the Green Bay Packers, primarily within the safety room, has some newfound depth and some newfound options and some newfound flexibility. Then there's Tyrese Knight of pick 118 of the Seattle Seahawks, coming out of UTEP. This is somebody who not a lot of buzz was surround this guy on the draft night. I didn't really honestly know much about him, but the more he played for the Seattle Seahawks, like he actually went in there and became almost a full-time starter for them. Again, I'm using PFF here because it kind of just helps me discuss things in terms of actual numbers, in terms of actual performance. But 6'2", 235, played 550 snaps last year, 65.4 overall grade, 73.3 pass rush grade, 63.4 coverage grade, 53 solo tackles, 2 sacks, 31 assisted tackles. Again, we're talking about a 4th round pick. And for a 4th round pick to be playing 500 plus snaps and be a big part of your offense, that tells you that it was actually a really good pick. So for the Seattle Seahawks, a team that really could use linebacker depth, it now feels like they have that guy who can be their starter alongside Ernest Jones and play a big part of this offense. All right, next is Malik Mustafa, safety taken out of Wake Forest to the San Francisco 49ers. Again, one of those late round draft steals of the San Francisco 49ers that they've become really good at doing. They did it with Bernardo Green. They're probably doing it here with Malik Mustafa. On the year, 755 snaps played, 63.9 overall grade, 72.1 pass rush grade, coverage grade of 60.1, only allowed 7 receptions, 1 total pressure, 1 interception, 46 solo tackles. 755 snaps for a 4th round pick is just insane. And again, San Francisco is one of those teams that consistently does this, so it does check out. It does make a lot of sense. Hell, they kind of did it twice in this draft. Their 1st round pick arguably was maybe their worst pick in Ricky Pearsall. Not saying he's going to be a bust. We'll have to wait and see on him. But Bernardo Green was a steal in the 2nd round. Malik Mustafa was a steal here in the 4th round. So San Francisco, for everything that's gone wrong with this team, their 2024 NFL draft does look to have some really talented players on that team. Just one pick after Malik Mustafa, of course, is Bucky Irving, who became a focal point of the offense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. Again, with all the great receiving options they have, they needed something to kind of counter it, and Bucky Irving went in there, was that counter. Wasn't necessarily somebody who, like they had before, where he was just kind of a, somebody who got some of the dirty yards and was more of a, a workhorse guy. This is somebody who comes in there, plays with some speed, plays with some energy, and it was something that this Buccaneers team kind of needed. Like, it felt like this was a team that was a little bit slower, and they needed somebody who could be that change of pace guy who can also work in the pass game as well. And Bucky Irving kind of became that person. Like, he went in there, it was a bit of a slow start, and admittedly speaking, I was not too high on Bucky Irving because of his size, but man, when he went into Tampa Bay, got some legitimate opportunity, like he made the most of them every single night. And this was a Buccaneers team that, again, really needed that level of play from their backup running back, and well, they got it out of Bucky Irving. So shout out to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've also had a pretty solid draft. Ray Davis, shout out to him. He played kind of a pivotal role, playing opposite of James Cook, kind of similar to Bucky Irving, but almost in the opposite way. Ray Davis is somebody who can churn out some hard yards, a bit more of a bruisier style running back, whereas James Cook can kind of be, I guess, hypothetically more of like your Bucky Irving type of guy. I want to give a small little shout out to Jaden Hicks here. He didn't play a ton for the Chiefs last year, but in his short time, he actually played pretty well. Via PFF, PFF, he only played 330 snaps, but had a 72.0 coverage grade, 71.7 run defense grade, a 72.2 overall grade, 20 solo tackles, 3 picks, 2 total pressures, and 11 receptions allowed for somebody who was a 4th round pick. Didn't really play a whole bunch, but when he was on the field, it felt like he played some pretty decent role for this defense. Now that Justin Reed is off the team, maybe this allows somebody like Jaden Hicks to get a little bit more playing time. We'll have to wait and see, but for a guy who was taken 133rd overall, at the bare minimum, it does look like he's going to be a really solid depth piece that potentially could get playing a lot more playing time in the future, especially now that Justin Reed is gone. But now we enter into the 5th round, and there are a number of big time guys here who played really well. I mean, right off the bat, we got 2 Charger corners that I thought had decent seasons. Now, they weren't perfect by no means, but they went in there and played decent at certain points. Tarheeb Steele had a really solid year, and Cam Hart out of Notre Dame. For Tarheeb Steele, sorry, it's hard to pronounce his name, 73.7 overall grade, 66.4 pass rush grade, 73.3 coverage grade, only allowed 47 receptions, 4 picks on over 785 snaps played. This was a Chargers team last year that really felt like their secondary wasn't the strongest. And man, you get 2 guys taken, in the 5th round, who end up being kind of starters for you. Here's Cam Hart, who I think played a little bit worse than Tarheeb, but definitely played just as well. 460 snaps played, 75.3 pass rush grade, 69.0 run defense grade, 55.4 coverage grade, only allowed 31 receptions and had 31 solo tackles. Like, again, we're talking about a 5th round pick, so at the bare minimum, it does look like he can be a guy who can get some playing time for you. Hell, in his rookie year, 460 snaps. So to start off the 5th round, you got 2 absolute banger picks from the LA Chargers here to add to their secondary. It's kind of funny they doubled down in one position and they both kind of worked out, oddly enough. A lot of these players are more of just depth options slash guys who are developmental pieces, but there are some really good players here. Josh Newton did get some playing time for the Bengals, definitely struggled at certain points, but I thought for the most part you saw enough flashes to feel okay about what his future could be with the team. Same thing can also be said about guys like Jeremiah Trotter, who didn't get a ton of playing time last year, but from what I've heard about the organization and their thoughts of him, they do think that in the future he will play a bigger role on the team, especially with the potential possibility of some guys leaving the roster in the next couple of years. But again, he didn't really do too much last year, so a lot of these guys are more depth options slash guys who just need development. But this was a guy who did get playing time. Shaw Smith-Wade out of Washington State for the Carolina Panthers. By no means was he an incredible player for this team, but played 300 snaps, became kind of a focal point of the defense as the season went on. Had a 49.6 coverage grade, but still got an interception, only allowed 21 receptions, and kind of does appear like he potentially could be a starter next year for the Panthers, or at least somebody who does play a lot of snaps. For a 5th round pick, played only 300 snaps. I wouldn't necessarily call him a steal per se, but you do feel okay about what his potential could become at some points. All right, Tyrone Tracy out of Purdue goes to the New York Giants at pick 166. This was a Giants team that really didn't have too many options at the running back room, especially after Saquon left. They signed Devin Singletary, but didn't really work out too much. But Tyrone Tracy comes in there and puts up good numbers on the season. Yeah, 839 rushing yards, 192 attempts, 5 touchdowns. And it does look like, and again, I could be wrong here, we'll have to wait and see, but it does look like he will be the starting running back for this team moving forward. And I can kind of see why. He had a really good year last year. And when you look at some of the running backs taken before him, like literally the pick before him, Rasheen Ali, I don't even know how many snaps he played last year, but Tyrone Tracy, compared to a lot of these other running backs taken in this round or rounds prior, like Audric Estime and some other guys, like it does appear like Tyrone Tracy is one of the best running backs to be taken out of this class. So big time pickup there for the New York Giants. Then there's some other guys here who are more upside picks here, like Kalen Carson for the Dallas Cowboys. Did get some plays, but I actually want to say he started the season off as a starter. Don't quote me on that, but showed flashes of what he potentially could become. Doesn't look like he'll ever be a full-time starter, but maybe at some point could be, a rotational guy. Same thing with like a Quantez Stiggers, and Jalen Ford out of Texas had a bit of a weird year because it felt like when he was playing, he was pretty good, but just didn't get a lot of opportunities. So hopefully he could be the successor for what they already have in that linebacking room. But then we enter into the 6th round, and finding true steals at this point is just a little bit harder to kind of come around here. There are some guys who didn't get some playing time. A lot of these guys are more just depth options for the future, or pieces that you're going to try to develop as time goes along. So a lot of these guys didn't get playing time, but there was one guy in this particular round that showed a lot of flashes and does look like will be a focal point of the team moving forward. And that was Jordan Whittington out of the LA Rams. Again, not necessarily somebody who you thought was going to be getting legitimate playing time in his rookie season. A lot of people, including myself, thought more special teams and maybe more of just a straight up, run blocker slash, maybe somebody who gets out there on screen plays and does some blocking. But no, he went out there, had a really good preseason, and ended up kind of becoming a focal point, especially when the receivers in that team got injured. And even when they did come back, like, Whittington still had a little bit of a role on the team. So, for a guy who taken here in the 6th round to even be respected and to be somebody who is going to be a part of this team moving forward, that was a good pick. Same thing with a guy like Christian Mahogany, Bo Limmer, Daquan Hardy, a bunch of these guys. Again, maybe not focal points of their Christian Boyd as well, maybe not focal points of their team, but at some point, maybe they will get some legitimate playing time at some point. In round 7, I don't really know if there's any true steals here. I'm kind of looking. Devon Vele definitely is a steal. This guy got a lot of playing time for the Denver Broncos last year and legitimately looks like he could be one of the options for that receiving core, which, by the way, does need a lot of help. But outside of that, not too many total steals here. So that is probably most of the steals here. Again, you guys let me know in the comment section below if I missed a name. I might have just passed over them and didn't see them, or maybe I just am not totally tapped in here. Javonte John Baptiste could play a role for the Commanders, by the way. So you guys let me know in the comment section below. Did I miss any names in terms of who are the draft steals? And if you enjoyed the video, hit the like and subscribe button. Love you guys. Peace.